Hello, I watched the first two episodes of Alien Earth the other day, so I'm going to share my thoughts about them. Spoiler warning for those first two episodes.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
So Alien Earth is part of the wider Alien franchise and is set 2 years before the events of Alien. Just in case you don't know, Alien is a film from 1979 directed by Ridley Scott. It's a sci-fi horror and is often brought up in discussions about the best films of all time. At the time of recording, it's got 94% from the critics on Rotten Tomatoes. Alien Earth has Ridley Scott as an executive producer, but it was created by Noah Hawley, who was also writer and creator for Fargo and one of my favourite shows, Legion. And you can definitely see some similarities here, especially when it comes to cinematic techniques, and we'll get into that later. So let's start with the opening scene of the first episode, which takes place on a research vessel that's returning to Earth after a 65-year expedition to collect specimens. This show is doing everything in its power to take the audience back to 1979 and back to the first Alien film in these opening moments of the season. The costume, the framing, the hairdos, the lighting, the dialogue, and even the sounds are all reminiscent of some of the scenes we see in that first Alien film. And this is an interesting choice and could suggest that they're trying to pull that older audience into this world, that they want fans of the original Alien to be interested and invested in this story, because setting it up this way wouldn't really mean much to people who hadn't seen the first film. They use this scene as an opportunity to establish and explore one of our more prominent characters, Morrow. He's a cyborg working for Weyland-Yutani. He's a proper company man, and this becomes apparent when the cargo that the crew are carrying, which includes a fully grown xenomorph, escapes and starts running riot on the ship and killing everyone except Morrow. He remains completely calm, always with his mission in mind. He doesn't have time for friends or emotions, and he really stands out amongst the rest of his crew. And for me, the show does a great job at creating this compelling character and establishing this lore around him very early on. But back up a little bit. Whilst the opening scene is playing out and the crew are all chatting together, we start getting these flash forward type images and shots that show all the crew dead and mangled in all kinds of horrific ways. I did enjoy the way these visuals are spliced in, and it's the sort of thing that reminded me a bit of Legion, this seemingly erratic yet considered way of editing that creates meaning and feeling. Then the ship crashes into Earth, and as the episode progresses, there's a bit of a corporate race between Weyland-Yutani and a different corporation called Prodigy to retrieve the various alien beings that are on the ship. So let's talk about Prodigy now then. They are essentially experimenting with immortality and perfecting the human body. As part of their research, they are transferring the consciousness of dying children into adult synthetics, which are like these artificially made humans.
I'm going to be the first person to transition from a human body to a synthetic.
Because I'm special.
That's right. You're very, very special.
Their research facility is called Neverland, and our main child turned synthetic renames herself Wendy, and the other children who upgrade with her are also named after Peter Pan characters. The people at the research facility then refer to them collectively as the Lost Boys, so all a bit on the nose. So these are the two main lines of the action that start us on our journey. Morrow, who has survived the crash and alien rampage that has killed the rest of his crew, and Wendy and the Lost Boys, who have been sent to the wreckage to evaluate the situation. Wendy has also got a personal motivation here, as she's been having strong and emotive memories of her brother, who is a medic with Prodigy's military, and he is sent to the site of the crash to help. Now, he thinks his sister is dead from her illness, and of course, she looks different to how she did when he last saw her, but eventually they reunite. It's quite a touching moment as he asks her some questions just to make sure it's really her, and they embrace. And it's kind of nice. Now, the other thing that's going on here is the battle of the corporations. As the ship crashed into Prodigy's territory, they're kind of laying claim over whatever's in there.
We have a downed spacecraft.
I want what's on that ship.
So we can anticipate this unethical corporate race to be going on throughout the series, I reckon. So hopefully I've set the scene for you there of what's to expect in those first two episodes. So here's some of what I think works and what doesn't. The editing choices are certainly interesting. Some of it is really effective, like the flash forwards of the dead and mangled crew that I mentioned previously, but other times it felt a bit like using transitions and techniques just for the sake of using them. There's a lot of crossfades in this, and at times they are used effectively, especially when we're dealing with memories or with events that are still to come. But other times it felt like a bit of an afterthought and like it wasn't adding anything significant to the story. I think performance-wise, I'm mostly happy with what we've seen so far. You've got the gang of synths who are all children in adult bodies, and they all play the roles accordingly. You've got Timothy Olyphant, who's doing a great job. He clearly knows something. He's got a big secret, and he's not telling us about it, and I reckon it's a juicy one. And Morrow is a strong character as well, and I am definitely interested to see where his narrative goes. The only person I'm not super convinced by at this point is Boy Cavalier. He's the founder of Prodigy and is the youngest trillionaire on Earth. He has a couple of amusing lines in there, but for the most part, he's pretty one-dimensional. He doesn't immediately seem to have any redeeming qualities. He's just a bit obsessive, wacky rich guy and isn't particularly likable, but we're still very early in the series, so hopefully they'll explore him a bit more. I think, and I'm just realizing this now, but I think he's probably a synth or some sort of augmented human. It does feel exciting and interesting to see the world of the Alien films become a bit more developed. We get to see what's going on Earth. We're getting more context for what's to come, what has become of Earth. And it will be great to see how this unravels over the course of the series. The xenomorph is incredibly powerful and violent, which feels ominous and threatening. How on earth is this thing going to be stopped, especially if more are going to be hatched or grown? It's not like we can just blow them out into space like we usually do. Some elements do feel a bit repetitive. So the recovery teams, they go exploring in and around the wreckage and they move from one location to the next. They come across an alien, some people get killed, then we move on to a different location and kind of the same thing happens and unfolds in a very similar way. We've also got a bit of an obsession with sparks in this show. So many times our characters would be standing in front of some sparks that are pouring down from above. It happens so frequently and without clear source that it started to become a bit of a joke, like, oh, keep an eye out for the next load of sparks. I suppose what I would have liked is a bit more variety in the visuals and in the storytelling methods. You've got a good concept here, an interesting world has been established, and there's a compelling group of characters. You're nearly fully immersed into it because of those things, but then something will happen, like you'll get sparked on, or the editing choices remind you that you're watching a TV show, and it doesn't really let you sit in the atmosphere with the characters for too long. I think the almost constant use of music is detrimental to the immersion as well. I think silence is a really valuable tool in filmmaking or TV production. It can help create suspense and tension, but the way the music's used here is really overt and hard to ignore. This is another way in which I was reminded of Legion. There is loads of music in Legion, but it works in that it assists in enhancing the viewer's understanding and interpretation of what's happening on screen. Whereas here, I couldn't fully understand how it was being used to enhance or complement the narrative, and I don't think it did really. The storytelling methods that are successful for one show aren't necessarily then going to work in another. If I were to compare it to any of the Alien properties, I would say it's most like a cross between Alien and Alien Romulus with a bit of Prometheus synth action put in there. But I wouldn't say it's similar enough to any of those for a full comparison, but that it's certainly how I would describe the vibe. And I do feel like that is a positive thing because it indicates that it does very much belong in the franchise and is reminiscent of what has come before, but that it does have its own unique elements to it as well. It's familiar, but not a carbon copy of anything. So I know we're only 2 episodes in, but I did want to look at the critical reception and react to that here. So I haven't got this in my script. I haven't looked at it yet. I'm going to look at it for the first time now, and I will edit around all the weird, awkward pauses that I'm sure are to follow. Connecting Wi-Fi. Okay, so on IMDb, at the time of recording, it gets an 8 out of 10, so a flat 8. Then on Rotten Tomatoes. So Rotten Tomatoes, it's getting, okay, 76% from the audience and 96% from the critics. That critic score, that's too high. That's too high, I'm afraid. Unless they've seen the whole thing already, and so they've got a better perspective and maybe can see the fuller picture, and therefore it is a better show in that regard. But if we were going off the first 2 episodes, 96 is too high. 76? 76 from the audience. I would probably maybe be a bit more in line with that. I think 76% is about what I would rate it this far into the series. So only 2 episodes in, because that's all that's dropped at the time of recording. So I don't think it's amazing. It hasn't blown my socks off, but I am going to keep watching it. I'm just intrigued enough that I do want to know what happens. And to be honest, these days, that's kind of good enough. More and more, I find that I'm less likely to finish a film or TV show if it isn't truly grabbing me and if I really can't connect with the story or the characters. And though it's flawed, there is enough going on here that I want to see where this story goes. So that's everything from me for now, but I'll be back soon with more thoughts on things that I've watched. Bye!